Thank you so much for making time to join me here. And tonight we're going to cover the eligibility for this grant program, talk about the guidelines and the key elements of the application, as well as discuss the work samples. The purpose of the Artist Career Development Grant is to support artists in taking the next step in their creative development or artistic career. Maybe you need to complete a body of work for a unique exhibition opportunity, or maybe you have the chance to work with a mentor to significantly improve your skills in a certain area. This grant provides up to $4,000 in funding and is flexible in terms of the types of activities that you can apply for. This program is reviewed by a volunteer panel, and we try very hard to select panelists with a diversity of artistic backgrounds. We're going to start out covering the guidelines and eligibility. And I can't stress this enough. Read the guidelines. Even if you've written this grant before, it's not uncommon for there to be small shifts in our programs from year to year. And you want to make sure that you have the most up-to-date understanding of what's expected before you start writing. You can find the guidelines on our website under the Grants tab, and then you would go to For Artists. We always encourage applicants to start this process early so that you leave yourself with plenty of time for questions or to reformat your work samples or gather the information you need to draft a solid budget, all those sorts of things. Start early. When you begin the application process, you'll first have to complete the eligibility section by indicating that you are indeed 18 or older, that you've been a resident of Minnesota for at least 6 months, and that you are currently a resident of Region 7W, so you live in Benton, Stearns, Wright, or Sherburne counties. Lastly, to be eligible for this program, you must be a U.S. citizen or you must have your permanent residency. Next, we'll be jumping into the key elements of this application. So once you've completed the eligibility section, the rest of the application will become visible to you. So when you first log in and start an application, you're only really going to see the eligibility section. When you complete that, the rest of the application then will show up for you. The first section that you'll fill out is the proposal description. Use this section to clearly and concisely describe for the panel the activities that you intend to complete. You'll be responding to 3 criteria sections: artistic merit, need, and ability. And you'll see the list of criteria statements that address each of those sections at the very beginning of the application. They're also listed in the guidelines, which are posted on our website right now. If you wanted to start drafting your proposal, you could go ahead and download those guidelines and start working on your narrative. I encourage you to use this section, the proposal description, to provide some context about who you are as an artist in the beginning of this section. When addressing artistic merit, describe how this will contribute to your artistic growth. So explain how these activities, whatever the activities that you're proposing, explain how they will advance your skills, your knowledge, or your capacity. Provide specific examples of how these activities will help you grow as an artist. The whole point of this particular program is to further artistic development, to strengthen your artistic career. So when you're discussing your artwork, highlight the uniqueness or the aspects that demonstrate originality or innovation in your work. Discuss your technical skills and how they're reflected in your work. Be sure to describe your artistic vision and your process and how these inform your work and distinguish it from others. When you're establishing need, focus on the benefits to your artistic growth. Clearly address why these activities are essential for your development at this time. Identify specific gaps or needs in your current practice that this proposal will address. Describe your long-term artistic goals and show how the proposed activities are a strategic step toward achieving those goals. You'll also be addressing ability, and in that section, you want to establish the appropriateness between your current skill and the developmental experience you're seeking funding to support. Ensure that the proposed activities align with your current level of skill, and they're a good next step in furthering your artistic career. There's a separate question in the application where you're asked about your artistic training and experience, and you'll want to provide examples of past work or experiences that demonstrate your ability to successfully complete the proposed activities. You're going to be asked for a timeline, and you want to outline a detailed and logical timeline for implementing your proposal and include the steps you'll take, including key milestones along the way and deadlines. Address any potential challenges or barriers and explain how you plan to overcome them. When it comes to the budget, you'll need to list all the expenses related to your project. These expenses should be divided into two categories. You'll have your eligible expenses, which the grant funds will support, and then additional expenses, which might be part of your project but are not covered by the grant. You'll need to be able to provide an explanation for how any additional expenses will be covered, anything above and beyond the $4,000 that the grant would cover. For the eligible expenses, think about what you need to successfully complete your project. This could include fees for mentors or trainings, costs for workspace rental or for your own creative time. This grant does include funding for your own creative time, consumable supplies and materials or equipment purchases like a kiln or a camera. Be specific in your descriptions and show your calculations. For example, if you need a mentor for 4 hours at $50 an hour, you would list that as a $200 expense, and you'd show those calculations so that the panel understands how you arrived at that $200. This level of detail helps the review panel have a clear picture of your needs and ensures that they understand that you have a realistic plan for your proposal. Remember, the maximum amount you can request is $4,000, and you should round up your figures to the nearest dollar. If you're awarded, you'll need to submit receipts for all purchases made with the grant funds, so keep good records. Your work samples are a very important part of this application. You'll find detailed instructions in the guidelines regarding format and upload limits. You'll want to ensure that your samples meet the technical requirements specified in the guidelines, and you'll want to do that well in advance of submitting to make sure that you don't run into any surprises. And if you find that you do need assistance, I encourage you to reach out to Melissa, who's on our call here tonight. She is our technical guru, so if you need help resizing or talking through how to format your images, she's a great resource. I want to encourage you to remember quality over quantity when it comes to your work samples. You want to choose samples that are relevant to this proposal. For example, if you work in multiple mediums but are requesting funding to develop your skills as a potter, then focus your work samples on your pottery. Select high-quality work samples that showcase your skills and abilities. This means using clear, well-produced images, videos, or recordings that reflect your best work. If you can, avoid blurry or poorly lit samples. And we always encourage applicants not to group pieces together in one image, to have one image per page so that that artwork stands on its own and isn't competing with a bunch of other things in the background. And you should prioritize recent work that reflects your current practice and artistic direction. This demonstrates for panelists your current level of skill. In the application, you'll find a work sample description field, and we encourage you to use this to explain and provide context for each sample. You'd be surprised how many applications don't have any work sample description, and we've found that it gives panelists a lot of information. So if you're able to use that to tell panelists anything interesting about that work, is there something unique about the process that you use to make it? there's so much that panelists are able to get from the work sample description, and it's really unfortunate when we see applications that have almost nothing in that field. And we also encourage you to use this section, to explain your role in the work and its relevance to your proposed project. So for example, if you're an actor and you submit a video of a performance, you can use this section to help make sure the reviewers know which actor is you on stage, right? If there's something important about the process that you use to create the work, share that in the description field. I want to share some recommendations that I think apply to all grant writing in general. Do your best to provide evidence rather than just making assertions. So use specific examples to help ground your narrative in evidence. We see a lot of applications that make some sweeping statements, but then don't provide any evidence to anchor those statements. And those are frequently the application that leave panelists asking a lot of questions. People often get anxious when I mention providing evidence in their narrative because it sounds like a lot more work, but it really doesn't have to be complicated. Evidence, an example would be an application that's going to support purchasing a new kiln. The applicant could say, a new kiln will increase productivity. But a stronger application would say a new kiln will increase productivity because it has a larger capacity and can fit 50% more pieces, and it's energy efficient, so I can fire more regularly. Now you've provided evidence to support your assertion, right? I've said a couple times, but I think it bears repeating. Try your best to be clear and concise. Make sure your narrative is easy to understand and stays focused on the criteria. Anytime that a panel starts asking a lot of questions, those are the applications that tend not to score as well. So if you read your application, be looking at, and I encourage you to have somebody else read it, right? Ask somebody close to you or a mentor or a colleague to review your application and look for the holes, look for the questions. If you walk away from if somebody walks away from that application saying, I didn't understand this, I don't know why you wanted 50 pieces of watercolor paper if you were applying as an oil painter, right? You want to be thinking ahead of any questions that the panel could have and answering them for them in advance, right? I always encourage people to leave yourself enough time to proofread and edit, right? So if you finish your application and it's 24 hours before the due date, awesome, because you can let it sit and percolate. You can come back to it, proofread and edit. The deadline to request a draft review from the CMAB is July 25th. So if you have all of your responses entered into our online system by that date, then you can request that one of us review your application and provide feedback. This doesn't guarantee funding, but it does help provide direction around some of the most common feedback that we hear from panelists when reviewing grants. I hope that this was useful for you all tonight. We're always here to help, right? So we are advocates for our applicants. That's what we like. That's our motto at our office. And so if you're working on the application and you do run into a question, please reach out. I'm happy to hop on a call, a Zoom, meet you someplace if that works better for you. Melissa has often had people come into the office to help work through work samples together if it's scheduled ahead. So if you do run into any issues, please, please, please reach out to us. We're happy to try and problem solve this with you because we want the best applications that we can going to the panel because we'd like to fund as many as we possibly can. I really do appreciate everybody taking time out of your evening to be with us here tonight. I really do appreciate it. I hope it was useful for you. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out.